Welcome back to the guest bedroom for episode 2. Uh, I'm Simba Jones, and I am joined once again by Brian Saper. Welcome back.
Hello, Simba.
Yeah, good to have you back. Good to be
Yeah,
back.
man. Had
Fig-
had 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 a week off, and there's been a lot of stuff going on, so I'm looking forward to, talking to you about it, throwing it out there into the universe and see what sticks.
yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I figure we'll just keep it simple to start out. Just for anyone tuning in, I do plan to have time codes for this
Hey,
episode, so you can hop into the descriptions or on YouTube and kind of see what topics interest you if you're wanting something specific. But yeah, I figure to start, we'll just talk about what we've been playing. Um, I guess the most significant thing that I've been getting into is just some Elden Ring DLC. Uh,
oh, how's that been going?
it's been going. I'm stuck on one particular boss, and it is kind of really frustrating me. There might be, um, well, I really only one person that from the community who did tune into one of my streams. A shout out, Gridley Bear, who stopped by and showed me
Hey,
some support. I was doing some like real vampire, late night streams, like just like
oh
in the
man.
dead of night. That's like my sleep schedule these days, and um, it was fun. I had uh, the Gridley Bear stop by, and two just random people, just I guess who were looking for Elden Ring streams, you
Just
know.
wanted to get some good old Elden Ring.
And they were cheering me on. But for anyone who is familiar with Elden Ring, I'm fighting a boss named Commander Gaius, and for me, this
Oh,
this is this is the worst of it. This is harder than Melania. This is like absolutely crazy to me,
wow.
and that I from what I gather, that's not like sort of across the board common. Like everybody hates Melania. That's like a very common thing. Some people
Well,
struggle with Gaius. Some people don't seem to as much.
that's interesting. So like, because I have no experience with Elden Ring at all. So like, what's your barometer for like Millennia versus this new commander? What was his name?
Gaius.
Gaius.
I had the
Commander Gaius.
like
Like
I
what do you think's like the differences between them?
it. I mean, honestly, it's funny because like Melania is extremely hard for some very specific reasons, and even though she's so hard, I don't get as just like inherently frustrated by it. Like she very much is like a very cool like boss room, cool looking boss. I have fun with it. I want to overcome that challenge. I'll just
Hmm.
say it, like Gaius is just a bunch of bullshit. Like that's what I think. Where like he just is relentless, doesn't let you heal, just keeps attacking you. It's a man riding on a boar, like a jet. So it's
Oh,
like, and
okay.
the whole thing about it is like he will attack you and the boar will attack you, and so he'll get these move combos where like they're both just attacking you relentlessly, and you don't have any time to
Oh
catch your
no.
breath. And like even if you haven't played Melania, there's the couple. I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you consider boss mechanics to be a spoiler. Anyone who doesn't want that
Hmm.
very specific thing spoilers, no story spoilers, but Melania has more health than most bosses. She's like a typical
Well, she's like the
boss.
final boss, right?
In a sense, she's not
In a
necessary.
sense.
She's completely optional. You don't have to
Oh,
beat her to beat the
interesting.
game. It's very
Okay.
very possible that you could go through the whole game and not even find her. Um, She's kind of off
Wow.
in her own area. Something that's kind of funny because my friends love to get into the back end and do mods and stuff, and we play seamless co-op. And I had a friend tell me that in the code there's like a boss's health and their damage is based on areas of the game. And what you can do with mods is you can turn on a randomizer and put bosses in different locations, and they'll actually be harder or easier because the location, the way that it is, it's like because it how it expects you to traverse through the game. They're like, oh, these late game locations are like what's making the boss harder, and so Melania has her
Oh.
own difficulty. She is like labeled like as like the most like difficult thing in the game, and like if you play on the
Okay.
randomizer, you put another boss in there, it'll be like all leveled up and beefed up in her boss room. It's kind of funny. But most bosses, you get them down to half health and they have a second phase where they get harder.
Right.
Melania has an entire full health bar and then comes back alive for her second phase for another
Oh,
second full health bar,
jeez.
and she also heals every time she hits you. So
Oh my
that's kind
God.
of like just, it's very intimidating. Even like the minute you go in there, you're like, oh, this is gonna be something else, huh? Gaius doesn't have
And you're
any of that.
saying
He doesn't have any of those specific mechanics that like make it seem as if he would be harder. He just is. I
he
can't
just
figure it
has
out.
pig.
Yeah, he just has a
Pig
pig.
is what makes it hard.
It's so ridiculous. And it's the funny thing is his boss room is enormous, and it's very rare. But he's one of the few bosses where the game will allow you to ride your horse while fighting him. And so you
Ooh.
think that like, oh, if he's riding a thing, if he has a mount, I should be able to do that. That the horse combat is not really, you're not really meant to fight bosses on it. You can. It's
You
it's more of a just a traversal out in the open world thing. It's
mhm.
very simple. All of the sort of combat mechanics and stuff are completely stripped back, and you have a couple moves while you're riding on horseback. It is doable. I don't think it's necessarily designed for you to do that. It's kind of just like a fun thing, but I don't know.
Right.
It's interesting, but it's like
Like,
you go for it.
do you have your full kit while you're riding your horse?
Not quite. It's like
Okay. So it's you're definitely nerfing yourself if you ride your
yeah,
horse.
and it's like
Okay.
the benefits you're getting is you can run away a lot faster. You can cover more ground, and the horse has a double jump. It's very cool. I would say that Torrent's the name of the horse. I don't even he's not really even like a horse. He's kind of like this like horned like he's like the whatever animal, if you've seen Princess Mononoke, it's
Hmm.
like that kind of horned creature. I don't know if that's even like a
It's
real,
like not necessarily a deer, but it's also like
yeah,
some weird
like
amalgamation of
antelope thing.
mammals.
I don't know. He's
Yeah.
very much kind of straight up that animal from Spirited Away, and he have like a double jump. It feels very good, but it is mostly meant for traversal because the world of Elden Ring is so large.
Hmm.
And you can fight bosses on it, but like you basically just have simple attacks. All of your skills and like you don't have any sort of like, when you dodge as your player character, you have iframes, you have like
Right.
invulnerability. You don't have any of that on the horse. Like there is no sort of like you can dodge through a move and not get hit. You just have to like make sure you're not physically coming into contact with anything by double jumping out of the way and like running away and stuff. It's something. I'm starting to realize that even though I don't feel like I'm fully a From Software sicko yet, I'm
Hmm.
starting to realize I'm more so than not, because like as frustrated as this boss has made me, I'm like, but I can do it. I know I can do it. I gotta beat him. I
Hey
have to
man,
kill him. And I'm
gotta
like,
gotta strive for greatness.
yeah. So that's mostly what I've been playing this year, and then just dabbling with some other things. I finally tried out Balatro. That game's amazing.
Oh,
It's
hey.
I didn't realize, for anyone who might not be aware, it's on Apple Arcade as
Yep.
well. So if you I'm mooching off my parents. I didn't realize my dad paid for the whole package, the Apple TV, Apple Arcade, all that stuff. I'm enjoying some Balatro and some
Perfect.
Severance right now.
Nice.
um,
How far have you gotten into Balatro?
not too far. I've played like maybe 5 or 6 runs, getting a little further every time, but I've not managed to sort of fully complete a run quite yet. But I could
Hmm.
definitely see why it's so addicting. Um, and yeah, that's been a lot of fun. And then I guess the other shout out. This is a little late to the party here in terms of like the kind of funny streams, but I did start playing that like cinema trivia game that Nick was playing. I don't know if you caught that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like what it's got a stupid name. It's like Cine 2 Nerdle or something. Cine Nerdle
It's
2.
it's like it's like Nerdle but with cinema.
Yeah. Terrible
Yeah.
name, fantastic game. I I realized that I've wanted this kind of game for a long time, because a lot of times, like especially when I'm watching movies with my parents, we'll be like, oh, who's that actor? I remember they were in this movie, and that the movie was directed by this person, and we just kind of like linking up, seeing how many like ways that we can like link back to this movie, and that's essentially what the game is. It's like testing your knowledge, no matter if it's a director or a composer. You just try to link movies to each other. You know, if Bruce Willis was in
Hmm.
a movie, name another Bruce Willis movie, and so on and so forth. And it's basically just trying to see who has the most obscure movie knowledge compared to whoever you're fighting. And it was fun to watch Nick, Roger, and Joey play that. It's really funny to
Hmm.
me because like in a sense that it's not that serious, but it is kind of cheating a little bit to have like it's like a 3v1 how they do
I
it.
mean, it doesn't matter.
But I was doing the same thing. I was hopping in a Discord with friends, and they were helping me as we as we were playing a guy, and that's a very good sort of like side seat sort of like you can like co-op
Hmm.
game that game a little bit. And so yeah,
Feel like
that's
it's just like the next evolution of like, back in the day you'd play like the scenic games
oh
or
for
stuff like
sure.
that. And then of course the Jackbox. Now it's like the browser based. What can we make that's like sort of like GeoGuessr but with movies?
Yeah, for sure. That you just reminded me that there is what I consider to be there's a new player on the scene in terms of the GeoGuessr. There's a game called Time Guesser. It's
Time guesser.
so the name kind of threw me off. I had no idea what it was going to be, but it's so in similar to GeoGuessr, you are still using geography, but unlike how GeoGuessr kind of like allows you to kind of use the full Google Earth and like click through the roads and like completely explore. You're given one single photograph, and what you're meant to do from this one photograph is try to guess both the location geographically and the
Oh
year that
God.
the photo was taken. And so you're
What the
like,
fuck?
sometimes they're black and white, but they are like, it is more, it's not just any random photo like GeoGuessr. It's like a lot of them are like events throughout history to
Like famous photos
uh,
taken.
yeah, to some extent. Like a lot of
Okay.
them are like a lot more vague. Like it isn't gonna be like something completely obvious. Like, but like you can. They're very high resolution photos, so you can zoom in a lot and see text on someone's shirt or, a
Oh
flag in the
wow.
background and stuff. And you can challenge your friends. Or there's like a daily one. We've been playing that, and I've realized I'm learning a lot because I'm very bad at it. But
It
it's
sounds like that's like the FromSoft's version of GeoGuessr.
yeah, in a lot of ways.
Like when you're not holding your hand, you are going deep into this, and you're gonna
But
figure it out or die.
But the fun part is, I feel like I'm learning constantly because once you've made your guess, it tells you what the event is, and and
Okay.
and it tells you where it is. I'm like, oh, I the most embarrassing thing that I found out is I didn't know where Portugal was. I thought that it was
Oh,
in South America, and it's not,
nope.
not at all. Um,
Europe, baby.
but now I know. We're learning something. But yeah, that's I think that wraps up at least the stuff that I've been playing recently.
Okay. Um, you speaking of playing Elden Ring, I also kind of went into a Souls-like experience. I played the demo for First Berserker Kazan
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've
the
been
other
hearing
day.
about it.
Game looks really cool. I like the art style. Um, I think that this game is more and more making me realize how much I'm not a fan of Souls-like games.
Okay.
Um, it's not necessarily hard in any sense of the imagination. Like there is difficulty. Like what I think I enjoy is that the demo lets you pick your difficulty
Okay.
instead of
So it does have
having it locked.
difficulty, which is that's
Yeah.
already a bit of a bonus, I feel like.
So maybe I just have to like go at it easier. Maybe I'll try doing it at an easier level to see how I feel about it. But you know, with that being said, like the art style looks great. Of course, the voice acting is really good. Of course, Ben Starr is the main character, so Ben Starr, shout out.
He's in a lot of
Uh,
games coming
he's in
out
a lot of
soon.
games, which is great. I love it. Um, Other than that, I do appreciate the simplicity, yet also at the same time, I think the weightiness of the attacks feel pretty good for the
Okay.
most part. Because I think I'm such a action game snob when it comes to how the action feels while you're doing it. Like if there isn't, I don't know how to explain it. It's like that good feeling that you get when you swing your sword or like you do your move and it has like that good weighty feel to like every attack you do.
For sure.
It doesn't feel spongy. It doesn't feel too light for how the action is being played out. I think they did a good job of kind of differentiating between like light and heavy attacks and how you would kind of maneuver, dodge roll, and all that kind of stuff. The only thing that I kind of hope that upon release that they kind of fix out is their parry. Because I don't know about like anyone else who's played it. Like, let us know in the comments if you have a different opinion. But I feel like their parry doesn't have the good effect that most parry systems do. Because how the parry works is that Kazan just like holds up their weapon and then it has like the flash like a parry would if you hit successfully. Like your character kind of flashes like, oh, you did the parry.
Okay.
But instead of having that moment where you parry and like the enemy character kind of like gets off balance a little bit or like there's like a slowdown in animation, the enemy just keeps going.
Oh,
And so you just kind of have to either hold down the guard again or like try to parry again in the
it's
same
interesting.
sequence.
So do you
So
really get rewarded for parrying or?
I think you only get rewarded in the fact that like parrying does more to their stagger meter quicker.
Oh, okay.
But unless if you're actually going to get to stagger them on the parry, it kind of feels like it doesn't do a lot, to be
Interesting.
honest. And I haven't really played any like Souls or, Elden Ring, so I don't know how their parry systems differ between this one. But yeah, it doesn't feel rewarding up until you get the stagger on the enemy,
Okay.
which I kind of, coming from just like a standard like action game background, like it doesn't feel as rewarding like for timing it right every time or like an enemy's coming at you with like a three attack barrage and like you parry all three of them. Like there was a lot of times where I would parry one and then being trained by my past gameplay, like, oh, I got the parry, I have a chance to attack. It's like I parried. No, they're coming at me with the same amount of speed, so I get hit. And like I get hit like two times and I get knocked back. And it's like, okay. Like that was a little weird. Other than that, it feels pretty nice. I'm not giving up on it completely. Like I said, I'm gonna go
Okay.
back and try again. Just like my first time around, it was just kind of off-putting. So I feel like now that I understand it more, maybe it will be a better experience for me. But other than that, it's a free demo PlayStation on PlayStation. I think just network. It's not even just a plus
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, I think
So like anybody can go download it.
that's cool. Is it? I imagine it's maybe. I don't know if it has like a PC demo as well.
Yeah, it might.
But because I want to say I know Andy played the demo, and I
Hmm.
mean, if he had the option, I know he would have played it on a PC. But it's not like he doesn't have a PlayStation. So if it is only
Yeah.
on PlayStation, that could be a thing. But it's I feel like we've seen a bit of a resurgence in demos. And
Yeah, I know.
to some extent, like I feel like it is weirdly, specifically a lot of Japanese games. Like Final Fantasy 16 had a demo. Um,
Metaphor.
so like I don't know if it's sort of like fully come back, but I feel like just the amount of games that have had demos recently has been quite a number of them.
And like demos that carry over save data, I think is the biggest
That's
deal.
really nice. That's the
I
one.
don't remember if Kazan had like said that the save data carries
Okay,
over, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
and I that's like the one thing of like I guess I'm like even though in a lot of ways it's like the same thing, I'm more likely to try a demo than like a beta. Even though like
Mm-hmm.
if it's like a beta that's very close to release, in a lot of ways that is just a demo. But I know for for the dev side, it's a lot more of like a network test for them. But like, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm very excited and I want to play Monster Hunter Wilds, but I don't. I'm not really interested in hopping into the beta, especially because progress does not carry over. So I'm just like, ah, I'll just play the
That's
full
the
game.
wildest thing to me. Like I understand it's more so for network testing, but I'm like the amount of time and effort you put into like a Monster Hunter game, like I feel like they have to give you something.
I almost wonder if it's to try to like because I don't know. It's I've only ever played Monster Hunter World, but if I
Mm.
recall, I think there was a lot of like if your friends got far too far ahead of you, you couldn't join them on the like higher level hunts, and so I almost feel like they
Mm.
don't want the like super sweaty people to just get super far ahead and then like oh friend didn't play the beta now he's got to catch up before he can play with us kind of thing. Maybe they want everyone to just start the main game together, but I'm like oh I don't know. It
Where's
does
the
seem like
fun
an
in
odd
that?
choice. I don't fully understand how that mechanic worked or if that'll be reworked at all because I would imagine that the higher level people could still go play the lower level stuff with their friends and not have it break everything. As
Or
in
have like
like
some kind of balancing out, like, kind of meet in the
yeah.
middle kind of thing. Because I know Destiny 2 does it now, where if you load up into a fire team and you have, let's say, like for me, my level is like 7 levels lower than my friends are. Like the mission will kind of level out and uh kind of make it so it's not super difficult. Like I'll get my ass beat, but I can still like do a good amount of damage towards the enemy
Yeah,
in
if
that
I
way. So it's like I still get the reward of playing with my friends, but also like I still have a harder time than I normally would if I was at level for like certain activities.
okay, yeah, if I recall, I want to say they took the approach of like the higher level people just have to like suck it up and go play the low
You're
level
on your own
stuff and
island.
not get the higher level people are just not getting any rewards that they care about, and so then it's just like yeah, just have to have good friends basically. 'Cause you might just have a friend that's like, I don't want to go play that. I'm not gonna get anything from it. You have to catch up or whatever. But it might be a little better than that. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I'm pretty excited for that. I didn't play what's it called, Monster Hunter Rise, the like
Oh,
in
the
between ones, like
Switch.
yeah, the Switch one that they eventually
Yeah.
ported. I know I hear very good things, and I think I don't know. I just kind of got the sense that it was going to be a downgrade in some sense because like Monster Hunter World in a lot of ways was like it very much felt like an evolution of gaming and like it was just it felt like I'm like oh man I didn't this is like such a robust like crazy game and I felt like a game that made dedicated for the Switch even though it was ported it was just gonna not be able to do as much and be as grand and from what I
Mm.
understand, Monster Hunter World was very well liked by newcomers and not as liked by like true Monster Hunter like fans. Whereas like Monster Hunter
Oh yeah.
Rise is like the back to like the roots or like the what a lot of the fans are, especially because I know it's been like a mobile franchise for so long, PSP and
Mm.
DS and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to for better or worse, and I'm sure especially for people who aren't as into the series, it very much seems like Wilds is the sort of sequel to World.
Yeah. I remember going to PAX West I want to say like the year or so, like right before Monster Hunter World was coming out, and they had a booth at PAX West, and that line was so long, dude. Like I'm talking like over hour-long waits
Man,
like this was like what made PAX West do like the okay, we're gonna have certain lines be scheduled by appointment
all right.
because this was too much. Like the lines were like going out into like the rest of the convention. It was wild. But no, yeah, people really love what they did with World. So I'm interested to see from like, outside looking in, kind of seeing how people like Wilds and what they can do. Because it seems like, at least from what I've seen, like they're kind of throwing in like bits and pieces of what people liked about Rise as well
Okay.
into the kind of worlds like quote unquote open world like open zone kind of
Yeah,
gameplay.
it'll be
So
interesting because yeah, there's a
yeah.
lot of stuff like I know like there's I feel like those. no matter which one you're talking about, those games go really deep and have like just so much content. Where it's like even World had like an almost sort of like Shadow of the Erdtree level DLC where it was basically just another game, the Iceborne or whatever. It was just like
Oh yeah.
all this additional content. Never played that. I know it added like mounts and stuff, which it seems like you're just gonna get right off the bat when it comes to wilds. I've been seeing them ride around on that raptor looking thing.
Um, but yeah, other than that, the the new expansion for Pokemon TCG Pocket came out this past
Ooh,
week,
nice.
and so me and my buddies have been scrambling to try to get new cards out of those packs, and boy, I am having the hardest time. Um, Basically, I I have not spent any money in this game so far, which,
Alrighty.
I'm trying to be like blessed and try to be like, no, I'm not spending money. I don't need to sink myself down. I've already done it way too much with actual physical cards. I'm not doing it digitally. I can't do that to myself. It would be a trap. Um, but I will say like for a game that's been out for when this came out, like October, so like a few months. Like Pocket's been out for a few months. They've been doing a pretty good job of keeping people interested and active with releasing like special events every other week, having special like solo trials that you can do to collect promo cards and stuff like that. I just uh went through the solo event to get Cruselli EXs because they are pretty good for like psychic decks. Like they is basically just set up so it can do massive amounts of healing each turn. So like your enemy could like attack you and like hit you down. And it's like, okay, heals all of it up one turn. It's like, oh,
Nice.
like just keeps tanking anything. Uh,
Now that
but
we think about it, I'm surprised that it took them this long to make a digital version of the trading card game.
well, here's the funny thing. So there has been a digital version
Okay.
of the card game. So a long time ago, they made a desktop version called TCG Online, and it was like an old desktop kind of application, which then they ported to iPads, but it was like only iPads.
Interesting.
And then 2 years ago, they finally made a brand new one, launched it. It's called TCG Live, and that one is like desktop, phones, tablets, like any mobile device you can have it on it, which I personally really love. This app, however, has been very contentious with the TCG fan base because uh, they kind of pared down what online used to have as far as like modes, because like online used to have like tournament brackets, like online trading, and all that kind of stuff. But
It
live is literally just matches, and they adopted the Hearthstone card system where you get dust and like materials, so you can like craft cards,
okay.
which I personally really like because being someone who stepped away from the TCG for a couple amount of years and then coming back, I had nothing when online was around, and trying to trade cards online was a hassle because like if you wanted one really good card, someone would be like, "Okay, give me 30 packs of cards." And it's like I don't have the money for 30 packs of cards. What are you talking about? Um, and there's no, and so with that being said, I personally love live. Like if somebody was got into the TCG through Pocket and wants to like try out the full-fledged like card game, live is awesome. Like you don't have to spend any money at all. You can pretty much be up to date with all the new cards that come out each expansion for the TCG and just have a fun time. Pocket, however, I feel like has been really good because I have friends that like never played the TCG and are playing Pocket.
Okay. Yeah,
and
it's
they're like deep into
it's
Pocket, like
very, I
even more
mean,
than I am.
seems like it's very much caught on to the point, like I didn't even know that there were other versions, digital versions, and there's definitely a viral moment happening with that, with this new Pocket version.
Hmm.
And I feel like I know that like plenty of people play the game, but I feel like from an outside perspective, a lot of it very much seems for like a lot of people, especially like with the physical thing, especially growing up as like kids when I was in elementary school, very much seemed to be like more of a focus on collecting the cards as opposed to actually playing the game. People just wanted to have the different Pokemon and stuff, and I felt like not as many people actually played the game, but very much um, I'm coming at it from an outside perspective. The only card game I've ever had any familiarity with is Yu-Gi-Oh. Kind of fallen off of that. I'm sure people still play Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know anyone who does. That's like it's one of those things where it's like I kind of
It's
want to
still
get back in.
surviving though.
Yeah,
That's the wild thing.
it's pretty cool. But it's like one of those things. I still have my old cards, but it's like if I feel like now if I wanted to get back into a card game, I would go for something like Pokemon or Magic, just because like that's what I hear everyone playing. Like I have friends who play Magic. And I hear I don't hear. I'd have to make new friends or to find other people who play Yu-Gi-Oh, which is a thing that could happen. But I remember trying to play one of my Yu-Gi-Oh decks after years like not playing. I was like in high school. I saw some people playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and I'm like, oh man, I can't believe people still play. And I like brought a deck to school, asked if I could duel them, and then it was immediately they're like, oh no, that card's actually banned, or oh actually this rule has changed and all this
Ah,
stuff. And I
damn
was
it.
like, but they were being really nice about it. They're like, oh that card's technically banned, but I'll let you play it. You didn't know. And then I was like, oh that was kind of fun. I don't know if I'm into this anymore. The next day,
Hmm.
uh, the kid offered me $100 for the deck, um,
Oh
just on the
wow.
spot, and I'm like I don't know if he, if the whole deck, or maybe he wants a specific card, who knows? But I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you're very clearly into this.
Sure.
I'm like, and I took it, and I remember talking to some friends years later. I'm like, I wonder. He's like, it could have just been one card that was actually worth like way more than $100, and but like if he would have asked for just that one card, of course I would have gone home and looked at what that card was worth. But for the whole deck, it's like, and I'm like, but I was happy with just a clean. I'm like, I did not expect this at all. I was like, I didn't think anyone still played
Hey man,
Yu-Gi-Oh.
went in, tried it, decided not, and then like just someone just buys your deck off of you. Hey, I would take the deal too.
And but it's cool. I know there's like a lot of digital Yu-Gi-Oh
Oh yeah.
Yu-Gi-Ohs out there. I know like I haven't played like a version that's kind of like this new Pokemon or like the Magic where you're kind of like battling other people. I've only ever played the like actually
Mm.
like dedicated like you're playing through a story and like
Okay.
you're not really battling online people. Those were kind of interesting, but yeah, it's I feel like kind of like maybe I don't know 10 years ago when I wasn't as deep and kind of funny, wasn't as interested in just kind of like a lot of like nerdier stuff. I If you would have asked me, I would have thought that like Dungeons and Dragons and like Yu-Gi-Oh and all this stuff was like on the way out. I thought nobody plays this anymore. And then of course at least my sort of like modern introduction to like people are like still super into Dungeons and Dragons is when Stranger Things when people,
Oh, of
like,
course.
and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, it's like, oh, people are super into this. And now we're getting to the point where I've got an 11-year-old sister, and they've got like Dungeons and Dragons Club and like all this stuff that they didn't offer when I was in school.
Man, kids nowadays get all the real cool stuff.
They do,
I'm not gonna lie.
but I'm glad everyone, so many people are having fun with Pokemon. I might have to give it a try. I used to love Pokemon as a kid, and I've kind of fallen off of it, but like not it, in terms of interest, just in terms of just finding the time, interest drawn other places. But I've definitely kind of like I've never necessarily lost the love of just Pokemon in general. I just haven't,
Hmm.
especially for like the last I guess couple systems or so. I haven't had a in terms of the video game, I haven't had a Nintendo console to play the actual games on, so I've just kind of fallen
Oh,
off of
okay.
it. But
Hmm.
I'm excited for the Switch too. I'm excited to get
Dude.
back into that Nintendo goodness because that's definitely
A-
my biggest blind spot.
Dude, April can't come soon enough. I need to see what that Switch 2 is gonna do.
I'm very excited. I think they're gonna have some. I don't think they're gonna have any huge crazy like gimmick. It very much seems like it's a sequel to the Switch, but I think it's gonna be. I think they're gonna have some interesting things to talk about
Oh,
uh,
for sure.
that people might not expect. Um,
And and I guess speaking of that, not to go into the news segment like too quickly, but I just saw today that Nintendo like reiterated, it's like no, like Nintendo Online is coming to the Switch 2, so everything is gonna be porting over. Like they just want to like double down on that piece of knowledge. So the Switch 2 is gonna be jam packed, I think. And who knows, maybe TCG Pocket will be on the Switch 2. Who knows?
yeah, that'll be interesting. The one, I guess that might be a good way to transition here a bit to some some just like community projects and stuff. I did want to mention that I did watch United We Nerd, your podcast. And
Oh,
you guys were
hey,
talking about
thank
some
you.
Switch news and reacting to the reveal and all that.
Mm,
And I feel like there is like weirdly a lot to cover in even just that essentially just video of it that we got, just like the way that it kind of plays out when you slowly play it back. It's like
there's
even
a
when it,
lot of little hidden things there.
yeah, and it's like even though it's just like kind of mostly a look at the physical machine, yeah, there's like lots to talk about, lots of interesting things that you will wondering what they'll do. But yeah, I enjoyed listening to the podcast, and I that's kind of
Oh.
I got really into just kind of like I'm like that's it's kind of to an extent what I uh kind of like the original premise of this podcast is just kind of like highlighting what people are doing around, and so that's like for the last couple of weeks I've just been kind of bouncing around here and there, seeing what people are up to, and it's been really cool. I feel like it's been kind of a really fun thing to just see just how many people just in this specific kind of funny community are out there trying to do their own version of that, and it also has also let me know I'm just insatiable when it comes to people talking about video games. I could listen to people talk about that all day. I could talk about them all day. It's a great time.
No, for sure, because especially like so many people have different perspectives on everything. So being able to have people kind of start up their own podcast and like do their own content, we get to actually see so many other people and like their perspectives and just like have their conversations just be out in the ether for us to just kind of go and grab at and like just see like what everybody else thinks because it's easy to watch like a kind of funny games daily every weekday and then chat with people in the chat but be able to see the greater expanse of the KFBF community and see what they think about certain things. It's always a fun time.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, the one thing I really enjoyed, about United We Nerd and a couple of the other podcasts. Let's see, we've got I've, I've been pleased that a couple of folks hopped into the Discord for the guest bedroom and promoted some of the stuff they're working on. We've got Story Motors podcast with Mr. Hawks, definitely a name that I've seen all around um, the KF community, and then as well as the download queue. And the interesting thing that I thought was really cool is I want to say off the top of my head I don't know exact numbers, but both of them were coming in like they're in their 50th podcast or 50
Hell
plus
yeah.
podcast, so they've been going for about a year or longer, and I'm like it's really neat to see people really dedicating their time and sticking with that stuff, because like I know a lot of people, especially me, even just trying to start this can be discouraged when you maybe
Oh, for sure.
don't see like a response maybe you were expecting, or maybe you don't know how people are going to respond or if people are going to like what you're doing. And then the thing that I keep sort of seeing is that like I think generally people have so much fun doing it that they kind of realize that that's like the most important thing. And like it's been cool to see
Hmm.
like the different hosts that they're just doing it with their friends, and you can kind of at least for me, I feel like I could really tell on any of these podcasts that the people were good friends, and they had a good sort of like banter, and like really just had that good energy, and like it feels it, I mean that's kind of the whole point of Kind of Funny itself too. It's like these are the kind of conversations they'd be having anyway, even if the cameras weren't on, you know.
Exactly.
And so it's like, oh, you know, might as well record it. Someone else might be listening and might be interested. And, you know, there might be some people out there who don't have those friends or those folks in their life to have those conversations with. And so not only can they have these things to listen to, but they can even be a part of it. And so that's
Oh
been
yeah.
really fun. Um, but yeah, to
Yeah.
also, or yeah,
Shout out
go
to
for
all
it.
the creators out there doing their thing.
For sure. One, let's see, I guess I don't know. I think it was a couple weeks ago at this point. There was on actual Kind of Funny Games Daily. They uh, Jerkachu came on the podcast and announced what I thought was a pretty massive undertaking. It was the Drop In Drop Out podcast with 7 hosts. So, and
That's
I'm
a
like,
lot of
and
people.
I think the actual like idea there is it's a bunch of people that know each other, and they might not necessarily have all 7 on every podcast. It's like, oh, who's going to be here this week? Availability. I think the idea is having this core group of people so that podcast to podcast they at least have 2 or 3 people. But I jumped in and started listening to their sort of opening podcast that they've been rolling out, and they've had like 2 or 3 podcasts that have they've had all seven people, and it's
Oh
yeah,
man.
I thought it would be overwhelming, but it is kind of like an interesting like they very much seem to be like totally locked in and they've been cooking this for a while because they've got, you know, a fantastic graphics package. Shout out the French Dip Design, so a name I see around the community doing great artwork. But it's funny because I think the whole thing was they were not going to launch this podcast till like a couple weeks later. Greg needed someone on KFGD, and so Jerkachu.
Also, it's just like,
Then they're just like, oh well, we got to take this opportunity. I'm going to be on KFGD. Let's see if we can get an episode 0 and get this stuff going. And they did stuff like a fantasy critic and game of the year stuff, and it was a good time. And I think yeah,
nice.
there's tons of people out there doing great stuff. I guess the last thing I'll shout out to bring up Mr. Hawks again. I guess this was a few weeks ago now, but one of the best friends, Vitz Patel, started putting on a game show, very much inspired by Kind of Funny Games Showdown,
Oh,
called Pixel Pop Stars. He put out a feeler sort of sign up sheet. I want to say, I don't know, it was December sometime. Um, and I was on the first episode of that. I totally forgot to mention it on the first episode of this podcast.
oh, dude.
I was on it and I didn't even say anything. But Mr. Hawks was also on that. If memory serves, he did better than me. I was not that great, but it was a good time. And again, that was the last thing I wanted to mention. And we can kind of transition out of this. But on that game show, they had you pick a subject that you felt that you were an expert in. And the
Oh,
last
okay.
sort of segment of it is giving you questions tailored to you that you were meant to be knowledgeable about. Mr. Hawk's
Oh.
specialist subject was WWE, something
Oh,
I know
okay.
nothing about. Um,
Hey,
but
I need to listen to this episode.
to go, and that was it was a lot of fun. And the one of the episodes of his podcast Story Motors, he had a guest on. I believe it was Foxy Steve, and it was a complete, total, just completely all wrestling podcast. And at first I
Sick.
was like, oh, I don't know, because I know nothing about wrestling. It's not even to the point where like I dislike it. I don't even know enough about it to know if I would like it. And
Right.
but I was like, oh, I'm trying to spread the love. I'm trying to check out what people are making here. And I listened to the vast majority of that podcast, and it was I gotta say, even though I didn't know what was going on, their energy was infectious. I'm like they clearly just loved talking about wrestling, anything wrestling. And there's been stuff with Greg too. He got to go to Royal Rumble,
Yep.
and they had the podcast talking about is it WWE 2K25? Can't
Yep.
remember. I always
Coming
get
out.
confused if it's a year the next year, but I think that's like a NBA thing.
So it's kind of weird, like not to kind of derail us for a second, but it is kind of weird because it was like that for a little while, where it's always like the year ahead as far as like other sports games go.
Okay.
But when what was it? It was 2K20, I want to say the one that came out in like 2019. That game was god awful. Holy crap. To the point where they actually canceled the next one and spent an extra year developing, like redeveloping the game. And
Okay.
so now they release on the year, which,
You would have
you
think they
know,
would have just skipped the number, but it doesn't really matter. But it's
it
just
doesn't really
interesting
matter,
that it's
but
like we're a year behind now. But that's interesting. I know that generally speaking, it sounds like a lot they've improved to some extent of like
oh, for sure.
in terms of kind of it sounds like they were kind of getting overwhelmed with that yearly cycle. I know that they still in try to
So
keep
it
up with the yearly cycle, but
so it was kind of a weird thing because when because originally THQ was the makers of the WWE games,
okay.
but then back when they went bankrupt and they were selling off all of their IP and stuff like that, THQ 2K bought it,
Okay.
and they still had the original game developer Ukes to make the games along with like 2K Studios. And it wasn't until 2K20 where Ukes was like, "Nah, we're done. We're gonna we're gonna do something else. We're not gonna be doing this anymore." And so it was like that year was like 2K is like, "Okay, we need to figure out how to make this game by ourselves." And then 2K20 happened, and it was a hot pile of garbage. And uh, but ever since then, like they went to it, they kind of restructured the game from the ground up again, and it still has like the issues of like sports games where it's like it's iterative.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to see small improvements over time, but like ever since they came back from the hot mess, they've been gradually adding more and more things that the fans have been wanting over the years. So it's been really fun. The only thing I wish 2K would figure out is how to make their servers better.
Oh,
That's just the overall 2K thing. That's not like a WWE specific thing. Like 2K's online servers have been not great for years.
that's a rough one because I feel like, I mean, I know there's plenty of modes in those, but that's
Hmm.
definitely a game you want the online to be at
Oh,
least
for
decent.
sure. Yeah. Especially with all the creation tools that they give you for that game.
For
Like you can create your
sure.
wrestler,
Oh
you can
yeah, I
create your
know.
entrance, arena,
Shout out, I believe it's
you name
Olive
it.
Party that likes to make the KF crew
Hmm.
in the game. Those
They
are
do
always
great work.
fun. Um, but yeah, that's the one thing I wanted to talk about. I think before we get into some other news is just like I think I'm at that point of like I honestly feel like I'm missing out here with not knowing anything about wrestling. I'm like,
Hey man.
because for the most part, I feel like I'm a fan of pretty much anything else that Kind of Funny covers. And
Hmm.
I'm a big enough fan that I will listen to the wrestling content, even though I don't know what's going on. But it's like I've always just kind of like not known where to begin, not know what's going on. I've never had a single person in my real life, friend or family, ever be into wrestling or anything, and so it's just never kind of come
Okay.
naturally. And then like I don't necessarily know what a good like onboarding point. I feel like even like jumping in, it always seems like I'm gonna be like out of the
So
loop.
so let me ask you this. Do you have Netflix?
I I
or
can
can you
get
get access
Netflix.
to Netflix?
I need to figure that out. I for a
Okay.
while I was riding on my parents' Netflix. They finally got me with the whole like IP sharing thing. It
Oh,
finally
they
kicked
they
me
got me
off.
too. They got me too. But like look at your like phone provider or like whatever your cell phone provider is. Like most people like will give you a Netflix account for free. That's how I got mine.
Okay.
Like shout out T-Mobile. Like it's not a sponsor. Um, but no, legit. I think if you wanted to try to get into like the greater like WWE like wrestling experience, now is the time. Because we
Okay.
just had the Royal Rumble, which is what they call the road to WrestleMania. It's like this is where everything starts to kick into high gear for like the biggest show of the year, right? So like if you have like Netflix, like they have Raw on Netflix, like their big show every Monday. Um, if you got a VPN, you can watch everything else on Netflix too. And didn't hear that from me though. But no, yeah, legit. Like now is like the biggest time because they're when WrestleMania happens, it's kind of like the soft reboot of everything. So like everything is leading up to like that grand finale, and then the whole next year of content starts
Okay.
for it. And honestly, like being a lifelong wrestling fan, that likes to go check out other different companies, not just WWE, you're never gonna really find the most perfect way to jump in. You're just gonna have to jump in, and usually the show that you watch does a good job of filling you in on the information that you might have missed, and then you can catch up pretty quickly to like what's happening right now, and then you can kind of go off and like check out stuff that's happened in the past if you want to, like whatever you find interesting within the world of wrestling you can kind of cherry pick from what's happening right now.
Cool. Yeah, that one thing that's like I don't know how significant it is, I guess, uh, in the wrestling world, but the only thing that I'm even aware of is obviously I know who John Cena is, and I'm this is gonna be
It's
his
his
like
last
last
year.
year, right? I'm like I really
Yeah.
like him as an actor. In terms of the sort of collection of wrestlers gone actor, I think he's my favorite. Um,
Oh yeah. Like him and Batista, if they have like the best acting career, to be honest. Um, but yeah, dude, like especially if you're like even somewhat interested, like having it be John Cena's last year in like being like an active wrestler. Like, let me just like build up the story. It's like you have John Cena, like one of the most famous like modern day wrestlers of all time. Everybody knows who he is, even if you don't like wrestling, you know who John Cena is, and he has been tied for the most championship wins out of anybody in wrestling in like WWE history. Like he's tied 16 championships with Ric Flair, like an old wrestler. He's trying to get his 17th.
okay.
And so he said that by the end of this year, like to like this the last day of December this year, that's it. So he is now trying to find his way to getting his 17th championship and breaking the record. We just went through the Royal Rumble. There's another event happening pretty soon, and there's WrestleMania, and then the rest of the year. Thing is, John Cena has been having a losing streak for 5 years.
Ooh.
Like he comes back every now and again for special events, but he's always been losing. So it's like the story for him is how is he gonna find the way to make all the right necessary changes so that he can win and get that championship. And that's just one story in the WWE universe. There's so many more. So like my Blue Sky account has been become like a Jey Uso fan account, or I'm just counting down the days until Yeet Mania.
Nice. It's funny. I guess the my biggest touchdown with wrestling is for whatever reason, I did rent a few of the games back in the day when Blockbuster was still around, for no other reason than I was just like fascinated and I loved any game that had like a character creator and I was like, oh, I
Mm.
can make my own person and I can like do stuff with that. And I loved that. And I was just, I mean, also just like, when it comes to like just renting games. I was just anything and everything, anything that had looked even somewhat interesting. I'm like, I don't know anything
Yep.
about wrestling, but this seems fun. I'm gonna make my guy, and it was they weren't great back then. The character creators, and
Nope.
I think because I'm not even talking about the console. I'm pretty sure that I would rent the PSP wrestling games.
Oh. Oh boy. Okay.
But I
Yeah.
just was in like
Mm-hmm.
my own little world, wasn't playing with anybody, but I was just like having a good time. Like I liked seeing the little guy I created walk out to have like an entrance and doing all that. And I didn't really even understand how to play the game, but I would just be like, oh, what different hairstyles can I do? What can I? And I feel like back in the day, I like especially didn't get these sort of like premise of it. Like I knew that it was fake, but I kind of like didn't. I think especially when I was a really young kid, I was somehow under the impression that like the people who liked wrestling didn't know that it was fake. So I'm like, how did they not know? How is this many people? And I'm like, and then eventually, after I'm like, oh, it's kind of like you're buying into it. You're
A
suspension
suspension
of
of disbelief.
exactly. And I was like, yeah, that
Yeah.
definitely sounds like it could be fun. And there's obviously like a lot of not only acting involved, but the actual just like technical skill of like even if it's choreographed and they know things that are going to happen, it's still very impressive the athleticism
Oh
involved.
yeah.
And sometimes things can happen that that may not have been
So
planned.
accidents happen all the time.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? I think I'm at that point. I wanted to get a real shot, especially just like even if it's not directly wrestling, just how much of Greg specifically's personality is kind of comes from that energy, being a
Oh,
heel and all that.
100%.
Um,
Especially with his Stars in the Bank
oh my
briefcase. Oh,
god.
he's been a minute, but he's been like he's just using all of that wrestling fandom to the fullest with terrorizing Tim week after week.
It's been quite hilarious to watch that all unfold. He I think he really has. How did he put it? He's like he's hatched out of this egg. He's shed his skin. He's been completely just like even on another level compared to these 10 years were just the gestation period of of this final form of Greg, and
Oh no.
it's been the sight to see. But
Oh,
yeah, it's
yeah, dude. It, I just say again, if you want to give it a shot, just dive right in. Like there's no wrong way to try to get into it, honestly.
yeah, it's one of those things where especially just spending this time getting to know people in the community. So many people are into it. I'm like, I would just love to be able to share that with people because it's like, yeah, I've got pretty much everything covered. I've got any love Star Wars, love Marvel, love video games, movies, the works, and it's like that's I see enough people who are into wrestling. I know it's not even in terms of the kind of funny community. I know there's plenty of people who don't care for it, but it's like it seems like a
Hmm.
fun time, and I'd like to certainly dive in. So I think this is the year for me.
Hell yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
what I like to see.
yeah, it's exciting. I'm sure we'll talk about that on future podcasts. But yeah, let's just move into some other news topics. I guess we
All right.
might as well go into I guess another topic that I'm not as familiar with. I think it's definitely notable is the return of Rooster Teeth. Um,
Yeah.
it's very much a kind of like a very similar to the Smosh story where they bought back
Oh yeah.
their own name and took over a company that wasn't really under their control for a time. And I honestly what didn't necessarily expect to hear this. It kind of seemed like
Not at all.
especially Warner Brothers, just how much how much of a bad rap they get and how much just like completely wild decisions they make. I almost felt like they would have been the type of company to shut it down, not have any plans to do anything with it, but not let them have the IP
Lock it
back.
in a vault, just throw away the
Exactly.
key. Yeah.
Um,
No, for sure.
and it very much seemed very kind of like when we heard the announcements of it going away and everything that like this is it, this is the end. We'll see what any other hosts go and do their own thing, but it kind of didn't necessarily seem like we were gonna see a return. And obviously, I think we don't really kind of fully know to what extent the return will look like, who all may or not be coming back and stuff. I think I actually
Yeah.
didn't get the chance to watch the video that announced it, but
Oh, the
uh,
video is pretty great.
uh
It's just like a little inside joke. But no, yeah, it's very interesting because, last year we kind of went through the whole big like Rooster Teeth is going away, and it was pretty tough. And to your point, like what are we gonna see? They did they did have a press release about the announcement, and I have
okay,
it open right here and just kind of skimming through it. And uh, the press release came from Bernie himself, and just kind of vaguely kind of talk going over that they're planning on bringing back some of their old original content that they're able to keep. Because when Warner Brothers shut it down, they did manage to sell off some of their properties to other
oh,
companies.
I was not even aware of that.
Like Viz Media has Ruby now, so that's their
Oh,
property.
is it? I mean, I don't know if it's known, but is it because it was all like Rooster Teeth people doing the voice acting for that, right? I don't know if that is going
Yeah.
to continue or if they're just
So
gonna
so no,
recap.
they're continuing that
Okay,
because I've been seeing like advertisements on Viz Media with the voice actors because I know uh Barb and Uncle Min was one of the voices of in Ruby, and like the other cast is still there. So their Viz is, at least from my knowledge, like they're being faithful to like the people that worked on that show
well that's
as
nice to
far as
hear.
that goes. And I think some other properties were sold. I don't remember which ones off the top of my head. But like I can assume that like Red versus Blue is still gonna be there. I know a lot of their podcasts are still gonna be there, and at least from this press release, it seems like they're gonna be doing also new stuff as well. So it's gonna be kind of like a mixture of old and new. And I know Bernie and Ashley mentioned that it's like, hey, we know you're all excited, but don't go barraging the former Rooster Teeth members with, questions if they're coming back because it's been like 8 or 9 months. And so everybody has kind of moved on for the most part. And so, don't want to be asking people on and on. It's like, hey, you're going to come back to Rooster Teeth when they've already made, you know, other career changes or they've gone on to other places.
For sure.
But I'm assuming like if anybody is willing to come back and wants to come back, they probably will. And it's just for us as fans and just like, within like kind of floating around in the same realm of like fandom, because I know like, Kind of Funny was a Rooster Teeth podcast affiliate before they shut down. So I feel like there's a lot of fandoms that kind of interweave between Kind of Funny and Rooster Teeth. So for us, it's just kind of like a wait and see, just see what they have cooked up. Like we don't have to be too nosy about it, let everybody figure out what they're gonna do, what they want to do as far as being involved in Rooster Teeth and whatnot. But it was definitely a very exciting post that came up early in the morning because I know they released that video on the Rooster Teeth YouTube channel like very early in the morning, like 5 o'clock
Okay.
in the morning Pacific time, and then they had Bernie and Ashley have their Morning Somewhere podcast, and they had dropped like a 5 minute podcast, just like, hey, we bought Rooster Teeth. Rooster Teeth is back, and we don't have a lot of information, but we're gonna tell you something, in the future. It's like, okay, cool, awesome, sick. But hey, Rooster Teeth is not dead, apparently.
Yeah, I think ultimately good news. It's just like I feel like uh especially specifically in video games, I feel like the landscape is kind of a little bit doom and gloom right now with so many, whether it's layoffs or studios getting shut down or reallocated and all these things. It's nice to have good news like that of someone who shut down. It's kind of similar to the um, a little different, but reminds me of Hi-Fi Rush. Was it Tango Gameworks, where it kind of just seemed
Yeah.
like they were going to be gone, and then they were able to get sold off. Um, I think it was the PUBG people bought Tango Gameworks. It's like can't wait for PUBG, Callisto Protocol, and Hi-Fi Rush to be in the same universe. Um, but it's great that the studio didn't have to get shut down, and yeah, it's cool that Rooster Teeth was able to buy those rights back and kind of salvage that because yeah, Warner Brothers especially is just kind of relentless in their.
It's just L after L, dude.
It's like I really hope all of the sort of James Gunn stuff works out because it kind of seems like there's gonna that they're kind of like banking on his leadership of what he wants to do with DC before just like who knows what they I don't know I don't necessarily love all these sort of like acquisitions and like kind of like consolidations of stuff, but I almost kind of want someone to buy DC from Warner Brothers or something. I'm like I don't know if that's
Or
they're the best arbiters of that.
or at least have DC go on their own, you
Yeah,
know.
and it's interesting because like I keep forgetting that James Gunn wants to, or like the whole idea, like DC Studios is supposed to be everything. It's like the games, the comics, the movies. It's all combined. It's all, and we kind of still are waiting to see how that goes. But it's like, and then it gets awkward with like the stuff that was already in production. Of like, I see honestly keep forgetting that at least as far as I know, I don't think it's. I think it's still happening. The Wonder Woman game. It's like I
Dude, I was a news that was a piece of news this past week that like boggled my mind because we've been knowing about that game for like the past few years, and the fact that it seems like they're pivoting a little bit and it's gonna take even longer to come out.
Oh my god. Well, is it? I guess I must have missed the recent news, but is it because of James Gunn stuff? Do they want to incorporate it more,
No,
or is it's just we're taking a shift of the
no, I think
idea?
it, from my understanding, and I could be totally off base, so like again, correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, but it seems like because Monolith is the one that's doing it, the people that made the Shadow of Mordor
Yeah,
games.
I just looked up because I was wondering. Shadow of War came out in
Yeah.
2017.
Yeah.
They've
It's been a while,
been yeah, it's been some time.
but it just seems like basically kind of a mixture of like studio meddling and then, you know, the fact that Warner Brothers like game studios uh or it was either Warner Brothers Game Studios or Monolith themselves that copyrighted
The
the
Nemesis system.
Nemesis system, which is a really cool system, but it sucks that nobody else can use it. And it seems like they want to do a version of the Nemesis system for Wonder Woman. And I'm guessing something along the lines happened where it's like, okay, development time's going to take even longer now. It's like, okay, well, Warner Brothers is not batting 1,000 right now, especially in the game sector. Because like we had Suicide Squad, you know, Gotham Knights kind of was middling at best,
Specifically the
and
DC stuff, because like I feel like their biggest win
yeah,
was Harry Potter, um,
yeah,
and
surprisingly.
and then they seem to get the wrong idea of that of like, oh yeah, like instead of I forgot what the actual quote was, but one of the higher ups instead of looking at that and saying we need to make more single player stuff in the vein of that, they're just like, oh, that was successful, so we're gonna make more live service games.
More live service games, and it's
uh,
like, no, stop. Uh, yeah, it's. I just want there to be a good sense of like what they're gonna do, because it boggles my mind that in the span of like 2 to 3 years, Warner Brothers went from like one of the most like decorated, like highly admired like studios in Hollywood to being like one of the most joke pieces of trash studios after like the Discovery merger happened.
exactly.
And it's like they cannot get a hit. Like you're saying, like the Hogwarts Legacy game. was a hit a few years ago, and for and we still haven't seen what James Gunn's movies universe is going to be yet,
Yeah, not
which
really. We kind
I'm
of,
assuming is going to be good because I trust in James Gunn more than I trust in Warner
for
Brothers.
sure. I don't know if you've seen Creature Commandos.
I
It's
haven't.
like what I still think a very odd way to, I guess, what is essentially the start of this new DC canon. I guess we'll call it, where it's an animated show written by James Gunn, written and created, and it's like a bunch of just like, I mean, it's essentially Suicide Squad, but with these creatures instead of like people. It's like anyone who's not considered a human. Like that's essentially like the pitch of like, I guess, because that's the other weird thing too is like, well, I think most of the DCEU, all of Henry Cavill's, the Ben Affleck's Batman, all of that stuff is going away, but we're still going to
Mhm.
essentially consider just the James Gunn stuff canon, like Suicide Squad. His Suicide Squad is still in the canon. And Peacemaker, that's being brought forward. This Creatures Commando show is very much continuing off of the stuff that we saw in those projects.
Right.
And so it's like, I guess we're kind of, and it's his
But don't
stuff.
forget, don't forget the Robert Pattinson Batman movies
Well, I think that,
that are not canon,
yeah, they're like,
or
but
they're not
they'll
in
continue.
the greater
Yeah, they're like,
universe.
what do they call it? Like
So
Elseworlds kind of stuff.
yeah,
And so
which
that'll
don't get me
be
wrong,
interesting.
the Batman movie was a good movie.
Yeah, it
It was really
was.
good, but it's Warner Brothers' initiative that they need to make a universe. Like they looked at how Marvel did in the first three phases, and it's like we need to make our universe, and they jumped the gun with the Justice League, and that wasn't the best. There were some good moments, but it wasn't the best. And I think it's the fault that Warner Brothers and other studios are doing, where like they need to make their universes. Like look at Universal. They tried to make
The
a
MonsterVerse.
the MonsterVerse, and that lasted two movies
Forgot
because they
about
started
that.
with Dracula. They started with Dracula Untold, and it was a decent movie. It wasn't like spectacular, but it was it was all right. It was a good summer movie. And then the Mummy movie with Tom Cruise came out, and then that killed it.
Man,
There was like it's like no, this is never mind. Monster Universe done. We're backing down. Uh,
it's interesting
yeah,
the kind of effect that the MCU has had on the larger industry. Everyone's trying to capture that fire. Even the MCU themselves, I think most people would say that they haven't quite uh, gotten to the highs of the Infinity Saga, and everyone kind of like, I think honestly maybe the studios more than anyone else, like they want to capture that again, and it's like, I think, maybe it's an approach thing, maybe it's just like a money first idea of like, I feel like the original sort of like MCU run was, there was a lot of passion and a lot of just like trying to make this a thing. I mean, it was kind of the
I,
what saved Marvel, right? Like I keep forgetting that when that whole thing kicked off, they were
yeah.
not owned by Disney up until like, I don't know what kind of the timeline of the movies were, but
Like
even by the time we got to Avengers 1, they still weren't owned by him. But I think it was not long
yeah, I think it
after
was like right
that.
after Avengers. It was uh yeah, right after Avengers. I think that's when like the deal struck.
And even then, like, I don't know, I feel like you could kind of feel the corporate uh sort of element creeping in of like the movies for the most part I think were pretty solid for Infinity War, but then you've got like a million ABC shows and all this Netflix stuff and just like more and more and more and more and more.
And it's like,
Um
is this in the universe? It might be. Who
and it's
knows?
like yeah,
Netflix shows, maybe.
and then I don't even get me started on the Venom universe. The
So
Sony
Sony
stuff.
is doing their own weird thing that has not been.
I think that's over now, question mark. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they said that Craven was like the last straw
I fell off
as far as
hard. I see
it's like,
Venom
hey,
2 and that's it.
let's make a Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man.
So that now that you just reminded me, something that I read recently. I don't know if this is true or not, but they were saying that because a lot of people were assuming that because all of these deals, it's like everyone just trying to like make a deal that the people assumed that whatever deal had been struck meant that Tom Holland's Spider-Man could only appear in the MCU movies, and that's like why he wasn't in these Venom movies, and that it came out at some point where they said there was no rule or nothing preventing Tom Holland or another Spider-Man from being in these movies. They just thought that we would like that they could make this universe without Spider-Man, that we would all like that, and that would be okay. And I'm like, well,
Yeah. I heard another one being like Tom Holland didn't really want to be in the Sony
that's
universe.
fair. I don't know if that.
I mean, look, I mean, just look at the track record. Like I think the only good Spider-Man thing that Sony has made is the Spider-Verse movies.
Yeah,
Because I guess they trust their animation studios more than they do their live action studios to handle those properties. And it shows because Spider-Verse became like their biggest hit in like the last few years. And they just kept trying to make like the rogues gallery of Spider-Man villains trying to be anti-heroes when they shouldn't be. I think like the Venom movies have been like the only like slightly successful movies, but like I went to see Morbius in theaters and regretted the decision immediately. Uh yeah, it's just a very awkward situation. Like even if like just talking about like the MCU or like the first three phases were like, considered like the greatest thing that they've ever done. And then like you had the pandemic, you had, a change of the guard as far as like CEOs and like the structure of the company goes, and everything just started getting lost in like the mix with like the Disney Plus shows along with like the movie layouts, and everything is just out of order and out of mix, and they had to let go of some actors because of some legal troubles, and changing their overall plans for what they wanted to do. And now like the rumor is that they're just trying to rush to the end of like phase 6 so they can just kind of reboot everything.
yeah, it's
It's
a
like
lot.
it's a lot. uh it's a kind of situation that I think films hasn't been in yet, where like you create a franchise so big that it overtakes like everything in film, but then at the same time it starts collapsing in on itself. And it's like, how do you fix that? No one knows. No one has the perfect answer yet.
And I think it's really hard. I think we could kind of segue to this of like, because with video games, I think there's kind of largely like maybe a bit of a similar issue of like I think to some extent, uh, a lot of these larger projects, these more ambitious projects, are just costing so much money to make that it's very damaging when they miss. And it's like,
Hmm.
oh, this didn't hit. We
Yes.
just lost millions of dollars, and they're almost kind of forced to be especially reactionary because we're trying to please shareholders and we're trying to keep this going and we're trying to, nobody has sort of like a ceiling or like a level at which they like stop wanting to grow. It's just more and more and more. And to take it back to like
Hmm.
video games, we see that with EA and Bioware, where it's like,
Ugh.
um, again, I'm not really that familiar with the Dragon Age games, but from a lot of accounts, aside from a lot of people not liking those games for that or Veilguard specifically for the wrong reasons, it seemed to be very critically well liked game, but it just
Yeah.
didn't meet their sales expectations at 1.5
So
million copies.
so this is kind of a mixed bag kind of situation, at least as far as we're talking about the Veilguard for Dragon Age, because Dragon Age is a popular series that EA like BioWare has, but it's not the most popular.
Mm-hmm.
I think Greg touched upon this in this past week on Games Daily, but like Dragon Age itself does okay. It does well enough. Um, but back in the day, Dragon Age was like a console. Like I think they only released on Xbox. Like
Interesting.
correct me if I'm wrong again. I've been saying that this entire episode, but like um, it's easier to sell something of that caliber on one console, where Veilguard it did 1.5 million on multi-platform, which
Okay.
I can see that being the big issue because if you only do 1.5 altogether when it's like it's on Xbox, it's on PlayStation, it's on PC, that's an issue. And from all the reports we've been seeing, like it seemed like the people at BioWare knew that Dragon Age Veilguard wasn't going to be the big hit that they needed it to be. Because I think what there was like rumors at first that it was gonna be like a co-op multiplayer game,
Interesting.
and then they had to pare it back to like become a single player game, and then so it just and then plus they had Mass Effect 5 like in the wings, like being made at the same time. Um, I just wanted to reference this article that came out the past week from IGN about BioWare, the layoffs that happened this past week, and they laid off about 100 people, and it was, according to IGN, it was like 2 years ago. It was reported that BioWare had a little over 200 people working in the studio. So BioWare like laid off half of their staff.
Yeah,
Like
that's
like rough estimate, like half their staff this past week, and
so,
saying that they didn't need as many people to work on Mass Effect 5 seems weird to me.
it does. It's like
Like
again,
it's
yeah, I'm not like
oh,
super well versed in like because I know there is a bit of a cadence of like different amounts of staff depending on what point you're in production, but I know they kind of try to
right.
spin it as oh like oh we're not at we're at the point that the
We
game's
don't
at, we
need
don't need it, but
them
like that's a lot of people, you can't just kind of casually write that off, like that's significant.
for a game like like a Mass Effect game to like not need that many people. It's like unless if this game is coming out soon, which I kind of doubt it is because we haven't seen any gameplay of it yet.
Hmm.
Unless if they've just been very quiet. I I can't help but feel that BioWare is in a very dangerous situation where they don't want Mass Effect 5 to be a smash hit. They need Mass Effect 5 to be a smash hit. Because
I
if it's not, who's to say EA is not just be, okay, BioWare, we're gonna take some of this, put over here, take some of that, put over here, and like BioWare is just gonna fizzle
yeah,
away.
it's kind of seems like we're at that point, and I know some other people have made a good point of like one like you're saying like the Dragon Age fan base isn't quite like the Mass Effect fan base, but also they haven't they've definitely had a number of years in which they haven't really been able to make new fans, right? They had Anthem
Right.
and Mass Effect Andromeda, which you know it's what was it, I guess 2014 was Dragon Age Inquisition, and so it's like I
Let me see.
imagine that a large bulk of the people who played Veilguard were the existing Dragon Age fans. Um, and it's like so like I feel like with newer either newer audiences who are just missed the boat on their previous games or just younger audiences they haven't really they don't necessarily know unless you I guess unless you went back and played older games, like they don't really have that touchstone for BioWare, and they're not necessarily held in the high regard that they once were. And
Right.
yeah, I think it is very much like you're saying. At least in definitely in the term in the eyes of EA of like Mass Effect 5 kind of has to be the one. And I'm almost surprised. I forgot who was mentioning this, but like I know a lot of people were like, someone had brought up the Knights of the Old Republic remake and wondering why they didn't try to have BioWare remake it. And it's like I'm sure they were probably
I
busy, but it's like that's probably I don't even know if that project is. I think it's in terms of any official announcements. I think it's technically still alive. I don't think it actually is though.
I I don't want to be a pessimist about it, but like I honestly don't see that game ever coming out.
Yeah, and
I
they
don't think I don't think anybody wants to spend the time to truly
Because
remake
that's
that green from the ground up.
seems yeah, you definitely it seems like it would need to be quite the robust undertaking, just in terms of like from what I understand, like because it is almost kind of like a pseudo turn-based style combat, right?
Yeah,
And it's like
yeah.
I don't know if they would keep with that. I mean, it definitely sounds like it would be a full remake, and also I don't know how the Disney plays of it all plays like in terms of the story, in terms of
Oh,
like what's
oh,
canon and all
100%.
that. Like, have how are they rewriting and remaking this? And this definitely seems like a huge undertaking, and it's yeah, it's interesting. I yeah, again, I also don't expect that Mass Effect 5 is around the corner by any means, and it's like, are they
So like
planning to rehire more people that they just laid off? It doesn't make sense either. So it's like I don't really know.
I
It's a
so
scary
let me
time.
so I looked it up as you mentioned it earlier. Inquisition came out October 2014, and then Veilguard came out this past November. So it there was a 10-year gap between Dragon Age games that there was no way, unless just by word of mouth, that newer fans could get into the series. Because as far as I know, they never re-released any of the old Dragon Age games, which I felt like
Oh yeah, they didn't give it like the
maybe,
Mass Effect treatment with the like the legendary collection. We didn't really have
which
that.
the Legendary Edition did really well. Like it was their only game in the past few years that like actually scored well and sold well because people love Mass Effect, and it was a good enough collection of all three original trilogy of Mass Effect that people wanted to play it. But like you were saying before, Anthem came out, and I was really sad because I saw what could have been a really good game with Anthem, but the amount of content just wasn't there, and it you could finish that game up really quickly, and there was nothing else to do except fly around in the zones and do like their equivalent of like world events that would pop up every now and again. And like we're saying for Andromeda, like my my friend uh really loves Mass Effect, and he swears by Andromeda being a good game. And I tried Andromeda, I could not finish it up. It was just not. It didn't have the same draw to me as like the Mass Effect trilogy did. So hearing this news that they laid off like pretty much half of their studio and saying like, oh, we don't need that many people for Mass Effect 5, and it's like, are you like, I hope five's in a good place because there's so much buildup. Like there's been like stories now and now again of like these game franchises that has the awaited sequel ready to come out, and there's been so much buildup by the fans that is almost unattainable when the game comes out to reach. And we see stuff like Veilguard that people been wanting another Dragon Age game for a long time, and when they actually get another Dragon Age game, it's not hitting the marks that it needs to. So it's worrying me
Yeah, I
about
mean,
BioWare.
uh, I mean, I think there's a lot of this in the industry, but just EA specifically seems like they're kind of spiraling a little bit. Like, because there was the news that they're putting 4 studios to work on Battlefield stuff. Like, it was like
Oh yeah,
Criterion.
that's true.
Criterion's gonna take a break from Need for Speed and only work on Battlefield stuff. I don't know who all the 4 studios are, but it's like we're just gonna like create this like super team to make just Battlefield, and they even uh what's Vince Zampella, I think, who used to just be on like Respawn stuff, has not been head of Respawn for a minute here to kind of try to corral this like larger just like
Hmm.
games division that they have. And like I don't know, it's I've never uh played many of the Battlefield games, but it's like I almost feel like they've lost a little bit of the cachet there of like there hasn't been the sort of fervor for Battlefield, because the Battlefield used to stand toe to toe with Call of Duty,
Yeah.
and it's been some time since that's been the case.
Yeah, Battlefield has definitely kind of been on the downturn for a few years for sure. I know the last Battlefield that came out did not receive well at all, as far as I can tell. I never played it, but from what I was told, like people did not like that game. Like that, the player base dropped significantly on upon release. Just looking up real quick, EA is having Ripple Effect, Criterion, Motive, and Dice work on the next Battlefield game. So that's four pretty big studios as far as EA is concerned, working on uh, the next Battlefield game. And we kind of run into a Call of Duty situation here where one of two things can happen. One, the game still doesn't do well, and the blame could be put on all four of those studios, and we can see pare downs again for those studios and restructuring of those studios. Or Battlefield does really well, and then those studios become Battlefield studios
Yeah,
outright. Which either of those situations isn't an ideal situation. Because I know Dice was the studio that did Battlefield forever and ever and ever. So like they are the Battlefield studio, but like having Criterion and Ripple Effect and Motive become like designated Battlefield studios could work in the short term, but then the long term is yet to be seen,
for
you
sure.
know.
It's yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that. And I don't even know what they're doing on the Apex side of things. I know they want to do more stuff besides just
Apex
Apex
2.
Legends. Yeah, Apex 2 that went well for Overwatch. Um,
Uh,
but I don't know.
we'll never get Titanfall 3.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Like, and I almost I don't know. I know some people are of the mind. I think it was like a lot going into it, like we mostly discussed. But I think there was some people of the mind with Dragon Age that they kind of that they Titanfalled it a little bit in the sense of when they chose to release it. Of like Titanfall was released right around these other big games that maybe it could have had some more legs if they planned the release better. But I don't know. It's there was just a lot working
Hey,
against it.
if you like shoot first person shooters, you could just buy them all.
Yeah.
That was
Well, because it was their own game, right? Was it a Battlefield game or like what? I forget. Wasn't it another
so
EA game?
it was like Call of Duty, and then like 2 to 3 weeks later it was Titanfall 2, and then 2 to 3 weeks later it was the Battlefield. I think it was like Battlefield 1
Oh my
or
god.
whatever Battlefield was that year. And like I forgot who was running EA at the time, but it made like a press conference like, "Hey, if people like the first person shooters, they could just buy them all." And it's like, that's not how it works. People need to save money for these games.
Yeah, it's like unless they're all gonna be on Game Pass, we gotta do something else. Um,
Mm,
and so yeah, I don't know. I think the one it's very sort of like there's a bit of a bummer a lot of the news in the industry, but I think at least from a gamer's perspective, there's a lot to look forward to. I know a lot of people are being kind of alarmist and saying we're due for another great video game crash and Nintendo will have to save us once again. Who's I don't know if it'll be quite to that
Nite-
extent, but who knows?
Nintendo's on their own island,
Oh
dude.
yeah,
They're fine. They don't have
they're
to worry
skating. I
at
mean, like
all.
I forget. Yeah, like yeah, we don't have to get into specifics, but I know like just recently, like Tim was reading off just some of the sales numbers of just like the big like best selling Switch games, and it's like astronomical. There's just like crazy, especially for exclusive titles, and the idea that
Yeah.
like they I think they forget to mention this a lot. I don't know if this is still the case. I'm pretty sure it is that because Nintendo, I'm pretty sure still does not release their digital sales number. So we're talking about physical sales. I'm like this just it's insane. And so I think
Yep.
Nintendo's doing they're doing just fine. Um, and but yeah, I think I didn't look at the time. I should have maybe mentioned this. I do have to get going here soon, but I think that was good conversation what we had. I think
Yep.
it'll be interesting to see how these bigger studios handle things going forward. But I think yeah. Beyond that, maybe if you have anything just from any kind of funny content or specific things that you may have enjoyed over the past 2 weeks, we can maybe talk about that for a little bit. I know just
Oh,
we mentioned Marvel earlier when like all the Venom movies and stuff. The Marvel re rank was definitely interesting. I love how a lot of
yeah.
it didn't I didn't actually compare. I kind of wish they did this on the show, comparing both lists, like the original
Mhm.
list. But it's like I like that there's a lot that didn't change. Right, Avengers Endgame is still number one. That's my number one.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely do want to go back and like just do a side by side for sure to see what the differences were, but it was still kind of fun just to watch them kind of go over like all the movies over again and like
Yeah,
see where they would fall. Also, the game showdowns have been pretty good. I've been really enjoying those. Andy almost got it, almost
so
got the win
close.
this past game showdown. And it just didn't. It just came back at the end.
More
It was
stars
it
to
was
be threatened
tragic.
with.
Hmm.
I specifically liked the the previous week the Gary's like weird British games
Yeah.
bit. Those were some of the funniest titles I'd ever heard. They definitely got to try to bring him back as much as possible for those.
I would love just to have other different guests on to like from like different countries just to come do something similar to that. And just
Yeah,
like one just to see how much like uh Greg, Andy, and Tim struggle, but also just to see all the weird stuff that we have no idea exists.
yeah, it's so many weird old games that the one that's like burned in my memory. I know he like mentioned this. This was like years ago, like when KFGD was like first getting going. But it was, I knew it was real when it was like the first game that he put out there. I think it was Fat Worm Blows a Sparky. And I'm like, what are we? That's just like you can't make that up. Someone made it up.
Oh
And that just absolutely kills
man.
me every time I think about it. Yeah, that I think definitely Game Showdown is still some of their best content. I'm definitely glad of like because I mean I think I've always loved Kind of Feudy. It was I'm glad that they eventually pulled it out of being a Patreon thing because everyone needs
Oh, for
to
sure.
enjoy that and I feel like Blessing only kind of improves the formula the longer that he keeps doing it. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely some top tier stuff. I did want to
Um,
shout out the aliens
oh, the review,
reviews
yeah.
because I'm someone who had not seen Alien or Aliens, but I was
Okay.
like I love in review. I'm like I'm gonna try to watch along with whatever they do, and I definitely really enjoyed those. I think more than even I thought, and I knew they're classics. I knew they were like these well regarded movies. I'm like, man, Alien holds up really well for being I want to say it was
Yeah, it does.
1979, and I'm like, it was really good.
Mm.
And then uh, I was not prepared for Aliens. That honestly shot up to like one of my favorite movies. I was like
Oh,
very
wow.
surprised on
Okay.
how much I enjoyed that. I did end up watching the like special edition or whatever they didn't watch, and I personally think that was the way to go.
Okay.
Specifically because it's kind of a weird thing. They kind of like reversed it where like the director's cut of Alien is not Ridley Scott's preferred director cut. It was like
Oh.
a marketing thing. They were just like I don't know, they just wanted to call it this. My preferred cut is the theatrical release. But then in the opposite way, the special edition of Aliens, they didn't call it director's cut. That is actually James Cameron's preferred cut.
Oh,
It
okay.
very much should be called the director's cut. Um, but both my watching of the film and that the aliens in review specifically was
Oh boy.
gold. That was some uh, and like I don't know what I guess if you loved that maybe toss him a couple dollars if you have the means to super chat because that got demonetized because Andy's just too
It's
good at covering the Beatles apparently. I'll but
it, also,
yeah.
if anything, just for like that first few minutes of the episode.
Yeah, I love how like not only did they have the whole song, but it's like yeah, who knows? That was a very quality costume they had going on there. With
Hmm.
the, it's like they definitely went all out for that, and it was pretty enjoyable. And then the
Uh,
one thing that I almost never get to watch, or I guess make a priority to watch the game streams, just because it's a lot, and I'm like I love it. I if anything, I'll watch the highlights that they may post, but it's like
hmm.
I feel like well I think by and large it's always going to be good content, but it's like if I have to pick and choose, I'll usually go with like what is essentially more curated stuff in the podcasts. And then if I
Hmm.
want more, maybe try to pick out a game stream here or then. I did end up watching the entire Jedi Power Battles stream.
Oh, you brave
That
soul.
that was I am so glad that I did cuz I was dying laughing. This was some of the funniest stuff, especially because Tim's never on the gameplay streams and stuff.
Yep,
That it
no.
was gold. It was pure gold. They had, I mean, Andy was Darth Maul. He did the makeup. Nick was doing karaoke. It was a whole thing, and that game's terrible. That game is,
It is a garbage game, but
and
it's like the garbage game kind of games that's like a gem.
they would not have done that in one sitting if they didn't essentially find the cheat code where like Andy got to play as Padme and just have a gun. And just like, yeah, let's just shoot everything and breeze through this. And even then, it wasn't necessarily a cakewalk by any means, but the the like the journey of that, of just seeing them just like get worn down, wondering if they were gonna do this, and I'm just like I'm here for the ride. They really, I was surprised at how enjoyable that was. And I think they definitely like heightened it with the kind of fun little elements, having the costumes and everything. It was a real good time.
Oh yeah. I want to give a shout out to Snowbike Mike finishing Kingdom Hearts 2 this past week.
Nice.
He finally got there. It was it's such an interesting ride, like having the solo Mike streams, because I'll watch Mike's regular streams on Twitch every now and again when I get the opportunity to. Um, but his journey through Kingdom Hearts has been so interesting, uh, to say the least, and just to have him fight the final boss. Like I've never played Kingdom Hearts. I've tried playing the first one twice, and I just couldn't get through it. It's just not my vibe for whatever reason. So getting to see Mike just push through Kingdom Hearts 2 and get to the final boss, which if I didn't know any better, I'd felt like Kingdom Hearts was like a pseudo Souls-like game for how insane. Because like, not to spoil really much anything, but like the final boss is literally like Dragon Ball Z levels of bullshit. Or the final boss is like zipping around you at like like point break speed, and just like how does Mike get through this? And eventually he finds a way, but it's a journey to say the least. So if anybody hasn't watched it, I suggest at least hopping on just to see Mike. And there are some points where he does rage a little bit, and it's always kind of a fun time to see it happen. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see what he does next, because I think he mentioned that he might be doing more Kingdom Hearts stuff, but I don't know if he's going to be doing it right away.
Yeah, you would.
So,
Yeah, I get the sense that he could probably use a bit of a break. But shout out to Mike just in general for always holding down the gameplay streams. I mean, he not only for kind of funny proper, but just on his own personal channel. Right, I haven't got the chance to check it out, but I know a lot of people have been loving the backyard baseball Coach Mike stuff
mhm.
that they've been doing.
Oh yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's always fun to see. But yeah, yeah, I think it's definitely good couple weeks of content and the kind of fun he put out, and yeah, just yeah, I think it's been it's well, I think it's like, especially with the conversation we had today, like, talking about like a lot of the industry and Bioware stuff. Well, it's fun conversation and like interesting to kind of like dissect the breaking down, or like the inner workings of these studios. I am kind of just looking forward to Switch stuff, just in general. Of like it'd be fun to have
Hmm.
something a little bit more uplifting to talk about,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Where it's like, Um, it's because it's like, we definitely will ultimately have to see how a lot of these studios ride the waves of the a lot of the turmoil the industries in. It can be good to have some hope too, and like I'm sure, like, aside from just Nintendo, I think one of the bright spots in the industry is just a lot of the indie devs out there really making some great stuff. Looking forward to Hades too.
Mm-hmm. 82.
I wonder, like, I hope that that's like somehow a Switch launch title. That would be massive. That would be,
Dude.
Nintendo probably does almost want it because it would outshadow some of their stuff, you know. But yeah, that's gonna be some fun stuff to look forward to talking about. Um, but yeah, I guess we'll just wrap this up by saying once again, if anyone is interested in contributing to the podcast in any way, you can reach out to any of the socials. It should be KFBF Guest Bedroom on most platforms, or you can join the Discord that I should have linked various places. We are on Spotify now, as well as
Yeah.
YouTube, and the podcast upload service that I use is called Podbean. You can find it there
Oh
too. I don't know
yeah.
if anyone's like going specifically to that, but it is there. Still working on it. I'm getting it on Apple Podcasts. They're being a little annoying. But I'm sure we'll get it figured out. But yeah, it's uh, had a great time chatting with you, Brian. If there's anything else you want to
Always.
shout out, you can go ahead. But
Um, I recently was on a friend of mine's podcast called Gamesy Moss. Uh, I was on my friend Vic's podcast. We talked a bunch about Pokemon, just
nice.
like in general, kind of like our histories with Pokemon, what we look forward to in the future with Pokemon. It was a really fun time. Also, he is doing a giveaway, so if you want to go check it out, go check it out. It's Gamesy Moss Pod on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, I believe as well. So go check it out. He's a real cool dude doing his thing in SoCal. But yeah, other than that, we're here, baby.
Yeah, we're here. Guest bedroom. Door is always open. And yeah, until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.